Do you ever remember being young and just having this, I don't know, spark inside of yourself that you just want to play games and run around and be a lunatic? I remember those days. My brother and I, he's my older brother. He's 1 year older than me. And I was like 4 years old at this time, and we would want to play games like cops and robbers. I don't know if as a kid you played anything like this, but we loved these types of games, hide and seek, cops and robbers. And one day, a miracle happened. We were so excited. We just couldn't believe it. We had found a five paper. Now, I know that most people that are adults wouldn't call that, a five paper. We would call it a $5 bill, as I have since learned. That's what you call a $5 bill, not a five paper. But when we were young, I was 4 years old, man. I saw that Abe thing on there. Boom, five paper, man. We were set. My brother and I were so excited. And we've been playing around outside. It was just sitting there on the ground outside, a little bit wet, but we shoved that thing so fast inside of a pocket. And now we had to find a way to get mom to go to the corner store. You see, back in those days, we had a little K&K. That's what we had. It's called the K&K. I don't know if you ever heard of a K&K. I think they got bought out by Crosby's or something like that. But we had this K&K, and that's where we go to get the juice. And I am talking juice, like apple juice. We go there, we get orange juice. That's, the corner store type of thing. So we convince our mother to leave the trailer park and head on down to the K&K. And we get there and we go inside, and you see, my brother and I, we were devious. We knew what we had to do. We had to distract our mother. We had to have our mother focused on the back of the store because the dream was about to come true. You see, we were going to buy a cap gun. I mean, these days, I don't even know if they sell cap guns anymore. I don't think I've seen one in a convenience store in many, many years. But back then, that was the creme de la creme for a boy. Getting a nice little cap gun, right, with the extra caps. Cap gun was like $2.95. Extra caps was like $1.50. It was awesome. We had just enough. And I think I spent the 50 cents on candy, if I'm going to be honest. Still haven't figured that out. And while my brother was distracting my mother in the back of the store, I was this little kid just reaching up with this little five paper to the cashier, put the cap gun on. Man, we were so excited. And I hid everything under my shirt. Boom, put it all underneath like nothing had happened. Oh, Mom, where are you? Play the game. Cashier smiled, didn't say a word. And we ended up getting in the car. My mom got some milk and cereal, if I remember correctly, and some Klondike bars. And we ended up driving home. You see, home for me was a trailer. So I am bona fide trailer trash. I guess I would classify as white trailer trash. So there it is. There's my history. That's where I come from. And we were pulling into the trailer, and I remember my mother going up inside with the grocery bag and me and my brother running to hide behind this tree. And I pulled out this cap gun. It was like I was a king above men. That's what it felt like. I was a legend. We had pulled off the greatest caper of our lives. And So we start taking this thing apart and throw all the paper on the ground, because who needs the paper for the cap? I mean, you're just trying to get the cap gun, you're putting the caps in, you know what I mean? It is such a scene of just pure glee. And we end up doing the most brilliant thing you could ever do when you're trying to be kind of secretive, kind of hidden. We decided to load this thing and do what we had done countless times before. We're playing cops and robbers, but one of us is running around the trailer, and the other one now has a live cap gun that is pulling the trigger. And we are just going wild, you know? I mean, I'm 4 years old. I'm the first runner. And then it's my turn, and my brother's running and everything like that. And we hear this sound of the door opening. And I hear my mother say, "Get over here now." And that's when I knew we're about to be in trouble. And she had seen the cap gun. And, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, it's a cap gun, Mom." And she said, "Where'd you get the money from that?" And I said, Mom, I found it over here on the ground." And before I could get the words out, my mother punched me in the face as hard as she could. And as you can imagine, a grown woman punching a 4-year-old boy in the face, I began flying back in the air and hit my head on the ground. And she said, "You stole that out of my purse." And I remember wanting to say something, but I knew that if I did, it would be meaningless. You see, by 4 years old, I'd already learned the laws of the jungle. I already understood that I needed to protect myself by being silent. I had already learned how to hide in the suffering, how to escape through fantasy. See, in that moment, I got up. I don't remember how I got into the car. I just remember we started moving on down the road. And you see, my mother was a vindictive woman at that time in her life. And she brought me all the way back to that K&K. And she walked us right in up to that cashier. And she said, "My son stole this money out of my purse, and you're going to return this." Now, mind you, if I remember correctly, she had just the cap gun and the cap. She literally didn't have any of the packaging. We destroyed that. And the lady looks at her behind the cashier's registers and goes, "Ma'am, it's already been purchased. I can't return it." And she said, "Tell him, Paul." She said, "Tell him how you took the money out of my purse." And this is the first memory that I can remember where it was lie to survive. That's one of the phrases that stuck with me all the way into adulthood. Lie to survive. And I told that cashier that I had taken the money out of my mother's purse for that cap gun. And she looked at me with what I now interpret as sadness when I go back and I can see that memory. And she ended up giving my mother the money back to my mother, and then she took the cap gun. And I remember as my mother was dragging me out of that store, looking back at her and just seeing the sadness in her, because she knew what happened. You know, the welts had already started coming forward, I would think, in my face at that point. And I remember normally in the car, as we were peeling out, there would be music of some sort. But this time there was nothing. And I just felt this growing sense of terror. I was so used to terror at this point in chronic fear continually of what was going to happen next by 4 years old that I almost was numb to it. But as we got closer and closer, and there was no sounds in the car except the road noise of a station wagon moving at a speed that is way beyond what a station wagon with 2 kids in it should be moving at. As we pulled up in the driveway, I thought maybe this is it. Maybe this is the one I don't wake up from. And my mother went inside and she said, "Get in here now." And I remember going in there, and she took me to the refrigerator, and she took out a Klondike bar from the freezer. And she walked outside with me and sat down on the porch, and she handed it to me. Now, I was never allowed to eat Klondike bars. That was mom's ice cream. That's what we were told as kids. No Klondike bars. You get caught with a Klondike bar, who knows what's going to happen to you. I had learned by that time to not test things at 4 years old. And she handed me this Klondike bar. And I was almost in shock and disbelief. I remember not moving for about 20 seconds. You see, my mother is the type of mother that would instantly change, instantly transform into this being of violence. So I didn't know what to do but take it. And I began eating that, and we didn't speak a word to each other. Not one sentence in that moment was spoken. And that was the point in my life where I developed the food addiction I still struggle with to this day. You see, I had made a 4 years old understanding of a very complex evil thing. And there was a phrase that rang in my mind. If I can just take it, on the other side I can eat. And that stuck with me for so many years in my life. Even to this day, I just had my birthday yesterday, and I don't do well on birthdays. I think there's still a lot there that I've got to make peace with. And I remember feeling nothing by age 4. I mean, nothing. And as I ate that Klondike bar, it was like I had connection with my mother. It's like the chaos had stopped. And I felt important in a way to her in that brief moment in time. And I look at that today, and I'm just realizing this while I'm talking through this. And I think that that's why I still will at random grab a Oreos and this, that, and the other thing, Cheetos and 2 candy bars and all this stuff, and I'll just eat it. I think that's why I still do this, which is a truly transcendent thing, because I've been looking for answers for that for about 20 years to understand why do I do this thing I don't want to do? And I think I'm trying to connect with my mother. This is the only time I really had with her was around food. And It's memories like this on the timeline of my life that always felt unsolved to me. So it's really exciting that I am doing this video and talking about this, because I think I finally understand the parts of me that were lost back there. I got some work to do on my own after I get done with this. But the message was that I had to be a liar. I could not tell the truth. It's one of the big messages I got out of that. Because lying and saying that I stole the money protected me. And so I became a liar for many years in my life until I started living by somewhat of a moral code. And it also taught me that food is comfort, that I can find solace and peace in food. And at this point in my life, I'm ashamed to admit it, but it's true, I'm heavier than I've ever been. And I think it's because of this one memory that I've isolated. And I think that's the beginning of my relationship with food being used as comfort instead of fuel. And I've always wanted to understand why I do that. You know, yesterday was not a good day with me with food. I mean, I had all this stuff, all this sugary stuff, you know? And today, I think I have clarity on that for the first time in my life. That really what that's about is that little kid with a bruised face sitting on the porch with his mom eating a Klondike bar. That's what it's all about. Is I'm trying to find relationships still. I'm trying to connect still. And it gives me pause. You know, it makes me feel now as an adult a tremendous sadness that that was the only way I ever felt connected to my mother, was in moments like that. I don't remember many more of those. I'm trying to think back through the things I remember from growing up, and I don't remember many more connective moments like that where my mom was focused on me and not the TV and not distraction. She was actually focused on me. And wow, what a memory. What a memory. How this has played out in my life now is that clearly that phrase is still ruling my life. To feel good, to feel comforted, I must eat. And I don't know if there's anyone else out there in the world that feels that way. But that is exactly what I feel right now. And I think that there is such a brilliance that's going to come out of that for me in the decisions I make going forward. I got to do some work on that. I got to understand the timeline of events and look at how this memory has affected all of the stages of my life, leading through the rest of these memories. Because it's the pursuit of that that has left me not taking care of myself. The message really is eat whatever is going to make you feel comfort. Don't take care of yourself. Because handing a little kid a Klondike bar and all the candy and all the things that was handed over the course of my life is not good for them, clearly. But the goal is to understand that part of myself that's still there, that's never grown up, that memory that's never been fully processed and never been moved from my short-term memory into my long-term memory. Clearly, this memory is controlling decisions that I make to this day. And that's ultimately my greatest pursuit in life, is to understand the things of my past that are beliefs and systems that I've created to survive, so that I can no longer have them affecting me in my future. Because the consequences are grave. Like the way that I consume sugar is going to have life-damaging effects on me, and most likely already has at this point. And it's one of those things I've always wanted to change, but I've been unable to, and I think it's because I did not have the wisdom that I discovered in this video. The wisdom of the moment to recognize that there's this 4-year-old child that's wounded and damaged, and the solution to punching a child in the face is a Klondike bar. I want to encourage you to follow me on this journey to help discover the things that are limiting you and holding you back as I discover my own. I want to encourage you to suffer well for a short time instead of suffering for a lifetime.